Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift for Paris Stage 8 recap. This is the 118-kilometre Nice loop stage, a training loop that many of the riders will have done, featuring multiple punchy climbs, all less than 20 minutes long, and they get progressively steeper throughout the stage with Côte de Pays, 6.6k, 7%. That's where I think Martinez attacked last year.
Yep.
Then a long step descent through Aires, and then they do the Col d'Aires, which has a 2-kilometre, 11% section before a step descent into Nice. I think that's the La Turbie descent. We had Pogačar 12 seconds ahead of Gaudu going into the stage, and really nice weather. I got the shorts on today here, and it was 20 degrees, definitely summer kit in Nice, which was good for the riders. It is called the race for the sun after all, but last year it was treacherous conditions, cold conditions, and definitely made for a more exciting finish. But satellite riders, we didn't have full chaos, Benji, but we did have some interesting riders in the break.
Yeah, and it started off without the satellite riders, actually, when we saw a tug buddy movement by UNOX Pro Cycling. This is like next level tug buddy, as in Christoph going up the road with Gregard and pulling Gregard into a breakaway and then dropping. That's like textbook, right?
Yeah, it was perfect. Christoph doing the work. He was a little bit off in the sprint stages, but one of the goals for UNOX was to take the KOM jersey in this race. And I think they were at Catalonia, but their first French World Tour stage race, and they did that. So job accomplished for Gregard. He was in every break. He probably was even in the break on Zwift on stage 6 when it got cancelled. But for your week ahead on Zwift, we have the Tour of Autopia. As I said, stage 2 is this week. Double XP, double points for you to snag more swag and level up faster. Benji will be racing throughout this week, but I believe there's a secret video coming on the later stages, so I won't say too much about that on Zwift. But if you want to check it out and get a free 7-day trial, you can go to the link down below, Zwift.com. But Benji, unlike Tirreno yesterday, the lack of teams with, we mentioned this in the preview yesterday, the lack of teams with a serious second GC option really meant no one that threatening could go on the break.
Exactly. We did have like breakaways with satellite riders, but you know they're not going to come into play that easily in the stage either. They're just going to stay up the road until they get caught again and so forth. But anyway, let's talk about it. A large group gets away. This is behind the Gregard, who's still up the road. Christoph's already back in the peloton or already on his way to the Gruppetto at this point, but a large group is created with Tratnik in there, so a Jumbo satellite rider for Vingegaard. We've got Hamilton for Simon Yates. Narvaez could go for the stage, could be for Sivakov, who's still like somewhere around 10th in GC, I think. Stefan Küng, very vital, potentially, for Gaudu, also in the breakaway satellite rider. Right in there as well, could be for, who the hell is the Bahrain rider again? Gino Mader? Yes. Yeah, exactly. Fred Wright going in the breakaway, because he doesn't want to be, penalized for anything that happens to Vingegaard in this stage. Anyway, loads of other riders in there. Izagirre Jon, Oliver Naesen, Kevin Vauquelin, who bridges up to that breakaway a bit later, Champoussin, teammate, Eenkhoorn, Calmejean, Goossens, De La Cruz, Ul, Gregard, but they're all like 6+ minutes, and instantly UAE is already pacing like crazy to keep this gap on roughly a minute max, because they want to control the stage. They want to make sure that all these satellite riders probably don't go up the road. What do you think should be a strategy for UAE here? As in, they want to control the race to make sure no dangerous breaks go, but if there's a group with satellite riders in it, are you that scared of, for example, a Tratnik being in there or Küng being in there?
I think they were just going for the stage the whole time, to be honest. I think they weren't worried about Gino Mader attacking across to Fred Wright or anything like that, to be honest. I think they were just going for the stage. And listen, it's the final stage of the race. You've got the best rider here. You've got the best possible parcours for their rider. It's his home roads. You've got a pretty strong team for it. He's better than the other GC guys, Gaudu and Vingegaard. Go for it. But I will be interested to see, Benji, will they repeat the mistakes of stage 9 and stage 10 in the Tour de France last year? Because there was a bit of that. There is the argument which we made, well, I made yesterday, where I was like, do you really want to pace really hard with Roglic in the GC lead on a sort of difficult stage? But the thing is, Pogačar isn't Roglic. Like, at no point did we ever think, especially in, nice conditions, Pogačar's just going to collapse on Côte d'Épée. He's never done it in his career. He's never done it on the large climb, on these sort of 15-minute climbs. So if you want to go over the stage, why not? Some teams didn't like it. De La Cruz wasn't happy later in the stage. But this is professional bike racing, and there's no gifts.
I think there were a lot of people, I think commentators even mentioned, at some point this will backfire to Pogačar, that he always tries to win the stage and so forth. But it's bike racing, eh? Like, I don't even think it will backfire.
No. Like, that's the thing. When Roglic, quote unquote, stole the stage from Maida in Paris-Nice, like, well, I guess Fred Wright crashed him out, so maybe it did come back.
Colbrelli as well. There's like this major conspiracy.
Yeah. Yeah, like there has to be some situation where UAE need a favor from Astana in the future. Like it doesn't matter really. I mean, the Jumbo do it too. Like, I didn't like when Wout van Aert took the intermediate sprint from Niels Eckhoff in the Tour last year, when he'd mathematically just about won the points jersey, and then I think afterwards, like, was criticizing Eckhoff for it. I really, really didn't like that. I think, but this is different. This is a stage when a Paris-Nice, like, come on. And it could backfire. It could Jumbo paced too hard last year. It could backfire. But yeah, that's pretty much it. UAE were burning through their riders reasonably quickly. They had Trentin pacing on the base of, we did have on the descent of Côte du Châteauneuf, I think before coverage maybe starting, that's probably the steepest, longest extended descent today. There were splits, but it all came back together, and the breaks started to split up too with Tratnik, Kung, Champoussin, I think, and Hamilton, but they were just on such a tight leash, Benji. Oh yeah, and
Erasure. He was the strongest of the 5.
Was he?
Actually, kind of he was, because the GC group behind was becoming smaller and smaller, and Vingegaard was basically isolated at this point, with Tratnik being up front. I will just talk about the break for a tiny bit before we get to that for a second. We see that group kind of splitting apart. One pulls bridges towards the breakaway and attacks that breakaway, and Naesen is the last one to try and hold on to Wout Poels. So Wout Poels is at this point the lone rider up front. But to go back to that moment there, Vingegaard is isolated with Tratnik ahead. Is it risky in a race like this of Jumbo-Visma to keep Vingegaard isolated, or would you say that it's a balance between, first of all, you think about how much of a danger is it to Vingegaard that he's alone there and a puncture happens and a crash? I'd say at this moment, with this specific scenario where he's fighting just for a podium spot, I would risk it as well, right?
I mean, there's a pretty big gap between him and Yates from 3rd to 4th. There's also a pretty big gap from 3rd to 2nd and 3rd to 1st. So, like, he also doesn't care, like about,
3rd, 2nd.
Versus 2nd. So, even if he was close, you'd want Tratnik ahead, because he can drop back easier than if he's hanging on full gas in the group and something goes wrong. Well, they can only help you so much. I think it is a bit of an illusion when a rider is quote-unquote isolated, but they have riders ahead. I'd always rather have the rider ahead, as long as they've not completely burned themselves. And UAE they were getting through their riders. They really pace. Oh, that's not true. Côte d'Épée, I think, was slow. Poles did it faster than UAE. The plan was to have Wellens do Côte d'Épée and the descent into the base of Col d'Ez. It's a long pedaling the whole time, that descent. You need to be... And this is where I was like, Poles attacked that break. I was like, could have done with a Stefan Kung and a Tratnik helping you there. They got brought back and sort of sat in the group and gave bottles to their respective GC leaders. But it just looked like UAE was setting a Pog attack up. Benji, it was... At that point, the race was done.
Yeah.
Already.
And the thing is, like, last year, we had the Jumbo strategy on the stage where they blew it up themselves, exposing themselves and making themselves vulnerable for attacks by other people and other GC riders in this race, because Roglic then ended up not being the strongest rider anyway. But when it comes to UAE here, they don't do that move. They don't explode the race so early on, like, Côte d'Épée or what was it? So I'd argue that UAE made a much better and safer strategy today than Jumbo did last year, right?
Yeah, I think what happened, basically Wellens, he's always going to be quicker than Poles on this sort of pedaling descent. They did Côte d'Épée slower than they needed to. They did it to make sure that Wellens could do that whole descent and they could keep Gross-Schartner in the wheels. They didn't have Gross-Schartner pace Côte d'Épée super hard. Huge group. Geniet's there with Gaudu. Simon Yates is there with Sobrero. Bahrain have got Mader and Haig. Sivakov's there with Martinez still. And Kalmajan, it's still a group of 20. Nick Schultz there. Even Søren Kragh Andersen made it over Côte d'Épée, so maybe see him on Poggio next weekend. And we come into, well, Poles is caught on the descent. We come onto the Col d'Ez, and Gross-Schartner goes like full lead out at the bottom, super hard sprinting, and then comes back together, keeps pacing. And UAE are like, well, we don't have to do anything. Gross-Schartner can pace this whole climb if he wants to, because Pog will win the sprint anyway. And then Simon Yates, I think almost in the same spot he attacked Roglic last year. It looks so different because of the weather. He goes on the steep part with like 4Ks to go, I think, or 3.8Ks to go on Col d'Ez near these villas. And it's a long attack. Jorgensen can't respond, Powers can't respond, but Gaudu, Vingegaard, and Pog are in the wheel, and then Pog counters Benji, and it's race over.
It is race over. Now, I think it's difficult how to judge Gaudu's response to that, because he like gets out of his saddle, he starts sprinting behind Pogacar for like 1.5 seconds, and then he stops completely. He was already on a gap. Like, there was a gap, so he probably wasn't going to make it anyway. I'll be honest about that. I didn't really believe in that. But at that point, he just settles it, and he just sits down, and he sits in the group with Vingegaard. And Vingegaard starts pacing, and he's using Vingegaard to pace. And he paces a bit himself, but mainly Jonas Vingegaard is once again pacing the group. So do you think he tried and realized he couldn't do it? Or do you think he was like, oh, I should use Jonas Vingegaard to try and close it like I did yesterday?
I think they came into the stage wanting to defend second, and that's how we approached the stage. And like, I'm going to have to do it in the tour. I can already sense it again. But one of Pogacar's biggest weapons is, and it's justifiable because he is often stronger, but he attacks and risks it, knowing just on Carpegna last year that the group behind, they're going to give you 15 free seconds whilst they squabble amongst themselves. Now, you're probably still going to win anyway, but Carpegna last year, this here, I believe, and also the stage he won on stage 8 in 2021 when he won by 3.5 minutes. He didn't win by 3.5 minutes because he physically could go 3.5 minutes quicker. On the team climb, or whatever the last climb was, you can see in the power data of Gaudu, they were like freewheeling at parts. And it's so smart. And it's why Pogacar's consistency and his snap, and he's going to win anyway, I get it, but Gaudu, I would have said, okay, can't follow, whatever. Can't follow. I would say leaning on third to chase back first when you're in second is, like, Vingegaard's never going to pull full gas. But then he attacks that group. And I'm like, now I'm confused. I don't know. And it was a strong attack. I was like, you should have spent this bullet getting into Pog's wheel, because after it levels off, remember last year, it levels off and it's like goes onto the main road, and it's shallow, and draft is huge. Remember Wout pulling Roglic back to Yates. So, I don't know. Could he have got back into the wheel if he'd played it differently? Probably not. But I think he's just playing for second.
I fear so as well. And then eventually you drop back to that second group anyway that you attacked. It's like, at that point, it was too late to make that move, like you said.
Because once the Poggy had 15-20.
Yep, exactly. And the gap went on. It was like 30. It was 40. At a certain point, it was 50 seconds. And it started going down a bit more towards the end once they went into the full-on descending part, like between like the bollards that were sketchy last year. We're a bit more safe this year, right? I felt like there
It
were
was
like actual
dry.
protections on it. That as well, but like
Uh,
protection parts on? No, there was a blind.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess they know the roads pretty well, like Jorgensen and co. Jorgensen came back to that group. Now he's dropped Bardet, Mader, Powless. They're all ahead of him on GC. He's doing a big amount of work for this group because he's just riding for GC. Pogacar's gone. The four are relaying. Yates can't really pull too much on the last 1,500 meters of the climb. And yeah, as Benji said, they don't really make an impression on Pog. He descends safely. He wins the stage on the Promenade des Anglais. Well clear. Time to post up. And a dominant performance from him at Paris-Nice, winning 3 stages, winning GC by 53 seconds behind. Very unlucky for Jorgensen, who the group started to play for the sprint a little bit, and he had to pull. He ends up coming on the stage 5th. Vingegaard beats Godot in the sprint and Yates, but that means that he stays in 8th on the same time as Bardet and 2 seconds behind Powless. So unlucky for Jorgensen. Mader and Haig and Sivakov and Bardet really came back to that group. They only finished 10 seconds behind, and they were 25 seconds behind before. So that's a shame for him, but the gaps between Godot, Vingegaard, and Yates meant that those guys were just going to play for the stage result. So yeah, that's Paris-Nice.
At least we called it yesterday. That would be a disappointing stage.
Yeah, we knew. We knew.
Because the stage happened exactly like how everybody expected it to be. Just action on Col Vos, and Pogacar's gone. That's the end.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't feel like
it's
we
not
can
Pog's
100%.
fault for being boring.
Yeah, it's not Pog's fault for being boring. It's the fact that there's so many factors going into this. You mentioned it earlier. No multiple leaders in GC. The factor that the riders that are in GC won't risk it. Vingegaard's off, for example, as well. Godou's happy with a 2nd place. If that's a rider that has won much in the past, that might change things, but that's not the case. So there's so many factors leading to the situation where nobody's going to risk a lot to lose a potential position, but for the desire of winning a position, of course. I don't know. It's disappointing, but hey, at least we're prepared for it. And hey, we'll get better races in the future. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that the problem was, and not problem, it was billed as the big showdown between Pogacar and Vingegaard, and it was, but clearly Vingegaard did not bring his watts of Gran Camino here.
Yeah,
he was not.
Mountain.
Yeah, even is that like a medium mountain? Loge de Garde, a reluctance to even call that a mountain. Yeah, he did not. Vingegaard didn't bring top shape, and without top shape, you have no chance against Pogacar, even with the TTT. And I think I'm just looking through Godou's results. I believe this is his first ever World Tour stage race GC podium after winning Tour de l'Avenir back in 2016. He obviously had 4th in the Tour. He's had, I think, 4th in UAE or 5th in UAE, but first ever. It's his best ever, 1 week GC result. And he was close to Pogacar before this stage. Actually, really, really close. And he didn't go for the intermediate sprints in the first 2 stages. Maybe that's a regret, but still, he's made a big statement to FDJ. And I still think they should take Demar and shouldn't send 7 domestiques.
I agree that Demar should probably be in that team because there's so many sprint stages in the Tour de France that you want someone to actually be able to compete there if you're a French team for certain.
Yeah.
But you think that this Godou could do something in LBL, we know that he can make the front group, but
yeah,
you believe in Flesh? He got 7th there once. At this level, maybe podium?
He was very, very good on Loge de Garde. They did like 6.6 watts per kilo for 16, 17 minutes around there. Very, very good performance. He was 2nd in Faun Ardèche, 4th in Faun Drôme Classic. Physically, he's very good, but in the finals, because he's not physically often better than the guys he's in the group with, I don't trust him to just make those exact decisions to maybe win a race where he isn't the strongest. because that's what you need to do against a Pogacar, a Vingegaard, a Roglic, whoever. So Loge de Garde attack was good, but then some other stages, like the mountaintop finish yesterday, maybe, like, for example, I watched on the plane, because I had nothing to do, I watched for Ardèche Classic, Benji, where
Was
he
it
was
better
with
than
Alaphilippe.
Banshee?
Pardon?
Was it better than
was
Banshee
actually.
in Shireen?
It was better. And he was very, very good in for Ardèche, but the way he rode for second, like, he didn't ride for second, but he did, because there was sort of, just go to the finish with Alaphilippe and maybe we'll see how it goes. When it comes to flesh and stuff, I like someone like a Martinez. I mean, Remco's going anyway. So anyway, he's in very, very good shape. So FDJ generally, Genietz, Kung, Demar was also climbing well. They got a lot of guys climbing very, very well. Jorgensen also stands out. Benji, you said on Twitter the other day, off to Trek. We already discussed it a little bit. He's, I don't think Schkelmers or anyone on their roster is finishing in that group in Paris-Nice.
Schkelmos this year might be close to it, but we don't know that because he crashed out of Tirreno, I think. So it's unfortunate. Was it here?
Yeah, yesterday. De Gent on the bridge, right?
I don't remember how high it was in GC, so I generally can't tell you. That being said, I agree, because it's also an American rider on a team that has an American sponsor that probably values more than having Schkelmos in that team as well. But also, why would you not try have 2 GC riders if you're Trek Segafredo? Like, I feel like it's valuable to have that. And Jorgensen is probably not the most expensive rider in the world either, even though he's talented. But there's going to be more than one team that's interested in this man. I'm very curious who it's going to be, but I guess we'll figure it out later, eh?
Yeah, he's good. He's obviously the TT, the question mark, is he bad at TT or is he on Movistar? And that's why he's bad at TT. That's something that needs to be ironed out, because with his size, with his overall power, like, he was really driving that chase group on the descent into Nice. He should be better than what he's shown in the time trial.
11th in the Dauphiné TT. That's not bad, eh?
Yeah.
That was a long flat TT, 31 kilometers. I think it's Movistar that's doing it. He was similar to a Yuzo there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Otherwise, Sivakov was okay here. Martinez was not. He got dropped badly yesterday. Paulus, I should also say another American, he finished in 6th on 3:17, and he was very good in the early stages. Mader's back in good shape. Yates just sort of doing Yates things. Bardet fine. I think, I don't know, Benji. All these Ineos riders aren't, I mean, it's only Paris-Nice, but I'm talking about Tirreno as well. None of them are jumping out and saying, give me that 3-year extension. I'm the GC guy. Obviously, Pidcock has that long-term deal. Gegenhardt, I would say, is looking better than Martinez and Sivakov across both races. He's looked quite sharp. But yeah, what about Paulus?
I'm mostly curious when it comes to Paulus towards the classics, because he's apparently riding the Cobble Classics, which I believe is actually a good move. I generally believe that he can compete there. He can be one of those riders that Van Barle's his way into like an early move and people underrate him because he's usually not at those races, and then suddenly he's in the top 5 of Ronde van Vlaanderen. I truly believe that's possible. No?
I think it's possible. He's a big engine. You saw him in World Championships. He was very, very, very strong. I haven't really spoken about Pogacar at all. He has won, I can't count, like 9, 10 races, whatever, this season already. 1,000 plus UCI points, puts Paris-Nice on the Palmares, as well as Andalusia and Jaén Paris. So Interior, anything for the Tour de France from this stage, from this race?
Not really. I think it's just that Pogacar's still on top of his game. And that doesn't change too much. Vingegaard was also not at the top of his game in March last year, so I'm not learning much from that. I do still feel like Roglic should be at the Tour de France next to Jonas Vingegaard, based on his performance in Tirreno. I believe that duo should be there together. But after riding the Giro, Roglic might not be at top form to do that. So, I don't know. I think Jumbo is putting them in a worse position by not having 2 leaders in the Tour de France, because then you get situations like this Paris-Nice where you don't have a second rider to go crazy on Pogacar to try and use unorthodox tactics to try and get better situations happening.
And UAE looks stronger, I would say, with Wellens and Groschartner.
Yes.
They were the 2 new riders into the team that were also controlling this whole stage. And I think they did so well. And Trentin had COVID and couldn't do the Tour last year, and they had to bring Hirschi in. So, of course, with the heat, it's completely different for Wellens in the Tour. But the team, Groschartner might come in for Soler, and Trentin will be in for Hirschi. And that team might be better, and Jumbo can't control the early parts of stages so well. I don't know. I think what's clear for me is that if Vingegaard's behind, you need the firepower with the Tour de France parcours to make some of those, like a Grand Colombier, really, really hard. If you have a group of 15, 12, all the GC leaders, and Jumbo's last domestique pulls off, and then Vingegaard has to attack from in front of Pogacar on 7% from a group of 12, there is no possibility of success in that situation. You'll get countered, or Pog will sit on and win the sprint. So, yeah, food for thought. But Pogacar looking very, very good. I guess the bike is quicker than Tom Bonen said. But that's all from us. We're going to watch the final of Tirreno Adriatico now.
Well,
sorry, it's not all from us.
Correction. I actually went back to listen to that episode of Tom Bonen and the other guy. And it actually wasn't Tom Bonen that said. That was the other guy. It was Dirk de Wolf. So
Dirk de Wolf, goat pundit.
Yeah. Well,
Dirk de Wolf, he's the only person that I think, didn't he go into bat for Remco after the Siege of Leuven in 21?
The Siege of Leuven? I don't remember, but
I think he went into bat for Remco.
We did too. Come on.
Yeah, but we're not Dutch. Well, sorry, I speak Dutch, but we don't produce content in Dutch. So I'm in the Dutch media.
Okay. I get that. It's fine.
Right.
Now on to Tirreno. You're right.
Tirreno, we'll go watch this sprint. Bauhaus going to clean it. Lovely stuff. And then we'll see you with the recap of that in about an hour and a half. Until then, ciao.